Today we are going to be doing a big comparison on Capos. That's right, the much beloved guitar accessory. We're going to be looking at some of the most popular brands, models, and styles to help you sort through the best capo for your playing. Stay tuned. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like our videos. If you'd like to support our channel, make sure to visit our Teespring store below. You can find custom designed t-shirts like this one. Pretty cool stuff. So like I said, we are looking at capos. Now, for most guitar players, this is a must-have accessory. But there's a bunch of different ones on the market. There's different styles. We all kind of have our preferences, but I wanted to do a comparison for you while you are out playing, trying to decide which capo to buy. Because capos can range in price from around $5 all the way to $70 or more, and you don't want to spend money on something that, as it turns out, isn't going to be perfect for what you're playing. So to accomplish this, I've gathered up 8 of the top selling capos that represent both brands, models, and styles of capo. So we're going to be looking at everything from basically an elastic band to something that's fully adjustable with the tension to something that has custom inlay of wood on it. So a lot of stuff. Now, one of the things we're also going to be doing is comparing this on this acoustic guitar. This is a Taylor 114E, and a Fender Brad Paisley signature model Telecaster. Why? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here's the reason. An acoustic guitar has a flatter radius than an electric guitar typically does. And for a lot of players out there, what we're looking at is a pretty good cross-section of what you probably have. So a Taylor guitar radius is 16-inch radius. That's the curvature of the fretboard. The Brad Paisley Fender Telecaster we're going to be looking at is a 9.5-inch radius, which is typical of most Fender electric guitars. Now, you might have a Gibson guitar that's a 12-inch radius, or an Ibanez guitar that's a really flat 17 radius, which you're probably not using a capo on anyway. But the point of the demonstration is to see how well these capos adapt to differences in the radius. Some of these capos are advertised as being able to adjust to the radius of your guitar, and some don't mention it at all. Now, in addition to the radius, the difference between acoustic and electric also deals with the tension and the thickness of the string. So if you've ever gone from one to another, you know that with the same pressure you put on an acoustic, you're very likely to put an electric out of tune. In other words, that much pressure will make it go sharp. Now that comes into play when we're talking about capos, because some of these capos you can adjust the tension, others you cannot. So if you're looking to purchase one capo and switch when you're on stage from acoustic to electric or vice versa, it's important to know what's likely to happen. And if you've used a capo for any amount of time, then you know what's likely to happen is intonation problems. And there's a lot of people out there that will probably watch this video right now at this point and comment below and say, well, that's why you put the capo on and then tune. And I agree. That is a great bit of wisdom. Put your capo on and then tune for the song you're about to play with the capo. But as many of us know who perform live on stage, sometimes there's really not enough time to do that. You just kind of have to put the capo on and go on to the next song in your set. So that's kind of what we're playing with here. So we're going to go from the least expensive up to the most expensive and try it out using a basic G chord and individual note intonation on each of these guitars. So let's get started. We're starting off with this guy. This is the Bill Russell, and I think Dunlop makes these. Probably a few different companies make these. It's pretty basic packaging, and let's be honest, I don't really care about packaging that much, but we'll talk about it because it can mean a lot to people, particularly if you spend a lot on a capo, how well it's packaged, how pretty it comes in the mail and so forth. But this is pretty basic. It's shrink wrapped to a piece of cardboard, and that's because it's about $4, okay? So this little capo, not including shipping and handling from wherever you buy it, is just shrink wrapped on here as I get it open. And it is effectively an elastic shoelace that's attached to a metal bar. And if you've ever seen the makeshift capo using rubber bands and a pencil, this is that, okay? Now it's a little bit more high-tech. You have a sliding nail or rod that's a retention post, and that holds the capo on one side and on the other, and then you have 3 adjustment points. So we can give this one points for adjustability somewhat. Now, it's not very easy to put on. What you have to do is affix it. And we're going to put this at the 3rd fret because that's where a lot of people end up playing their G chord. Basically, they're playing in B flat, and nobody likes to play that in bar chords anyway. So what you do is you affix this on here, hold it with your fingers, wrap the elastic band over, and then try and secure it. Now I'm going to secure it on this guitar at the very first setting. And it's on there, and it's pushing the strings down, and this is all we're effectively doing with a capo. We're shortening the vibrating length of the string to whatever the fret above the capo is. That first fret that the string is making contact with frets it, that effectively becomes kind of like your new nut. And so when you play something like a G chord, you're now playing it as a new chord in an entirely different key. That's the idea if you didn't know. So here we have it here, and let's see what it's doing for each one. You hear that? Sounds like a Tin Man. You don't want that. So what that tells us is that we're not getting enough tension. Now, before I adjust this, let's check the tuning on this guitar first. So normal G chord. Sounds nice. You can see it in tune on the screen. Now we're going to put the capo in. I'm going to have to tighten it up. So that's going to probably affect our intonation as we apply more pressure on the, let's flip it over, on the strings. I don't know why they give you this excess, maybe to protect the neck, but you do have some excess on here. I have no idea about the safety of this capo on different finishes, so buyer be warned if you have something that's nitro or something, it could affect it. Let's check each one. Oh, we're still getting that. Well, we can add even more tension. Did I mention this isn't easy to put on, but it's only $4? It's doing it. It sounds kind of deadened. Not terribly out of tune, honestly, but it doesn't sound great. It definitely deadens the low E string. So let's see how it sounds on the electric guitar. I'm going to hand this off camera magically, and it's just going to disappear and not fall to the floor. You didn't hear that? Just kidding. All right, so here we are now. This has got the 9.5-inch radius, and this is basically just a flat bar. So I think it's going to probably do even worse, but let's check the sound on its own. Pretty close. Let's see how it does. My guess is that this is going to give us more of the same problem we had before. So I'm going to pull that down. I'm going to wrap it over. That's on the middle setting. That's not pushing the strings down enough. Okay, final setting that we've got. It's pretty tight. Okay, so actually not too bad intonation-wise on this, except you're just going to deal with dead strings. So $4, that's what you get. So pros and cons. Pro, it's cheap. And I don't mean inexpensive. It's inexpensive because it's very cheaply made. The pin is basically just a metal bar going through a plastic sleeve with a elastic band. But it functionally works, and if you can't get anything else, it'll get you started. Would I recommend it? Probably not. It's difficult to use. Next one. Let's take a look at the Shubb. I'm going to switch guitars back, so we'll start with the acoustic each time. And it magically flies in from off screen. Look at that. Okay, so I will go on record right now of saying, because I think I've said this in previous videos, that I use a Shubb. This is their C1, which is a basic steel string guitar capo. Fits most acoustics and electrics according to the packaging. It's pretty basic packaging. This is their polished nickel version. And this uses kind of a cam mechanism. Now, Shubb is family owned. They make some great stuff. They have versions made in the US and then less expensive versions made elsewhere. They redesigned these a few years back to have a rolling wheel. It used to just be kind of a triangular piece that worked to put this up against the back of the neck. And the reason that I've used these and like these is that they're low profile, they're lightweight, and they're adjustable. You've got a little thumb screw here on the back where you can adjust how far out this little wheel is. And that affects how much pressure you're putting on the neck. And so that's nice. Now, Shubb says that you can use this on just about anything. It doesn't matter about the radius, that it's going to adapt and work well, unless it's like a vintage Fender 7 1/4 radius. And that's pretty common from most manufacturers, honestly. Those Fender ones are troublesome. So you go over the top, and let's, again, we're going to check the guitar. All right, now the thing about these is it does require a bit of trial and error. So once you have it set, it's not going to move. But that's probably a little too much there. I'm going to dial it back a bit. Okay, now I'm going over the top. Some of you can come from the treble side. Either way works. So no buzzing, no dead spots. The chord sounds pretty good. That's a little dead. So what we would do on that, again, is you want to tighten it up a bit. And that might be too much. Not bad. Let's try it on the electric. And for grins, I am not going to change the tension first, and then we'll adapt it. The guitar fairies grab the guitar again. So nice. All right. Now, we have our guitar signal. You hear that? That's just me. And that's what the capo is probably going to do, just pushing down. That's terrible, right? So this is where adjustability comes in. You would not pick this capo to switch back and forth without adjustment. All right, so you can see on the tuner how much it's changed. It sounds pretty spot on for the chord. And all it took was a few turns of the thumb wheel in order to get the tension dialed in on this. So I like that. I like the fact that you can take a capo and that you can adjust the tension on it to suit the gauge of strings for the guitar you're playing and not just the radius of the fretboard. Now we're going to go to probably a popular one. Most of you watching have seen these. You probably own multiples of them. You've probably lost more than most people have ever owned. And this is the Kyser Quick Change Capo. And this capo, I'm going to say, is probably what popularized kind of this pistol grip quick change motion. And so we're going to go ahead and try this. Now, I will go on record first and say this. This is from Kyser, a 6-string acoustic quick change capo. They make an electric guitar capo that is smaller with a smaller spring on it. So just keep that in mind as we're doing this. But the point is to see how much it changes on each guitar. So before I put it on, There's our guitar without a capo. And then at the 3rd fret, we're going to put it on there, and it just clamps in place. And I can hear some warble, I can hear some out of tune issues, but there's not much we can do. Now I have seen people kind of take and bend back on this part of the capo to adjust it for their neck, because neck thicknesses differ and whatnot. You can do that, but just know that that means that that capo is for that guitar, period. Okay? So if you have multiple guitars, that probably might cause an issue. Again, they have an electric guitar capo version, so just keep that in mind. Let's see how much it takes it out. Really bad. Enough of that. Okay, so you probably anticipated that was going to happen. I did, because again, they make an electric guitar version. So if you're wanting this style of capo, and you play acoustic and you play electric, you're probably going to have one of each. Now, for both of the Shubb and the Kyser, that's not too bad, because they're both about 20 bucks, $15 to $20, depending upon where you're getting it. So, you know, keep that in mind. You're not spending a whole lot of money. You can have multiples. With the adjustability of the Shubb, that's one of the pros on this, along with the low profile. One of the cons is I don't necessarily have one per se. I think this is a good all-around capo. Pro on this one is I guess the con on the Shubb is it's not as quick to put on. This is really fast to put on. That's why they call it a quick change. It's not very expensive. It comes in a variety of colors. You can even get one with a bandana look and American flag and whatnot. But there is no adjustability built into the capo. So keep that in mind. It's not really a one-size-fits-all approach. Now, a very similar capo is from Dunlop. Now, this is Dunlop's Trigger capo. It goes for about the same amount of money. It's a little bit over $20. Packaging is pretty much the same, kind of these blister packs that you can open up, which makes them easy to try in the store, by the way, if we ever get to go into music stores again. And it's in a variety of finishes. This is a maple finish. It's not made of maple. It's just a faux finish on this. And like the Kyser, it is a quick change capo. So it's trigger style, we'd call it. There's a spring built in. One of the differences on this is the shape of it. You are able to kind of cushion the back of the neck. It's built to take into consideration the radius on the back of the neck a little bit. No adjustability on radius, no adjustability on tension. So, here we go. Not too bad. It's a little stiff feeling, to be honest with you. Feels like the spring's pretty heavy. So let's see how it does on the electric. My guess is, thank you, Guitar Boffin. My guess is that it's probably going to be like the Kyser, because there's no adjustability and it feels like it's a pretty heavy spring. So actually, this has gone out of tune. Let's tune it real quick. So not pleasant unless you're into chorus. Again, no adjustability, kind of a not surprising result of that. So pros and cons, not very expensive, very easy to operate, very easy to change quickly, not well suited for electric guitars, and available in a number of finishes. So now we'll move on to some more adjustable options. And the next one comes from D'Addario. Now there's technically kind of two versions of this capo. And this is in typical Planet Waves D'Addario packaging. It's open, there's little bands that hold it in place. You've kind of got this red packaging on there. And if you've had any of their accessories, like their string winders and things like that, then you're pretty familiar with this packaging. Now this is a little bit more than the ones we've been looking at, but not by much. It's about 25 bucks currently. You can go to our website, alamomusic.com, for pricing on any of this stuff, because it does vary. And I'm just going to tear these if I can. There we go. So this is a compromise between the Shubb design that we saw and the trigger capos that we just looked at from Kyser and Dunlop. It's a trigger capo design. They call it the tri-action design, but it has adjustability of this spring-loaded mechanism here and a thumb wheel. Bonus, you actually have a little place you can keep a pick on the back of it as well. Now I mentioned there's kind of two versions of this. They also have the NS Artist Capo, which is kind of a front trigger design and has a place for one of their micro tuners on it. So I own one of these. I know a few people that use one of these, and the adjustability is what we tend to like, because as you've seen, you can kind of use it on anything. So let's start with the acoustic. And I'm just going to put it on at the initial setting. Little buzz, so we're going to tighten it up, and I can do that with it on, which is a benefit. Can't really do that with the Shubb, you have to undo it. Now real quick, let's talk about why it's buzzing. It's two parts. Part of it is the amount of tension, but the other part of it is that radius that we've talked about. When you don't have enough pressure and the capo doesn't match the radius of the neck, then what's happening is it's hitting those middle strings with more pressure than it's hitting those outer strings. And so you tend to have sharpness on the middle strings and a lack of contact or ample contact in tune on the outside. So that's kind of what we're playing with here. So no adjustability on the radius here. We've adjusted the tension, and let's see how it sounds. Pretty good, actually. So all in all, that's a nice capo because it's combining what we've seen so far as quick change, which you kind of want, and adjustability on the tension. But again, no discussion of the radius. So now I'm going to leave it where the tension was. We'll probably have to adjust it, but we're going to try it on the electric guitar. So without adjustment, it's sharp, which could be expected. Like we saw with the other trigger capos, having the same tension needed for an acoustic doesn't translate well for an electric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, like we started with on the acoustic, back it out all the way. Make sure we have good connection on there, and then still a little out of tune. So with this one, even with it adjusted out all the way, the spring on it is really more well suited for an acoustic guitar. So keep that in mind if you're wanting to buy a capo for both. This one also probably not as much adjustability as the Shubb to bring that tension off. So pros and cons. It's not very expensive again. It's around the $20 mark. You have the quick change functionality. It's a low profile. It's a pretty nice looking capo, and it's adjustable. And you get a place to hold your pick, although I've never ever put a pick there. So, but it's not a bad idea. So, you know, the Dario NS Tri-Action and its partner, the Artist Capo, are good adjustable capos that you should definitely be looking at, particularly if you're wanting something that's kind of quick change. So, now, let's look at one of the new guys on the market. And that is from Taylor. So Taylor Guitars has come out with some capos specifically designed for their guitars. And this style of capo is nothing new. In fact, this is a pretty old style of capo. And I'll say before these came out, I saw Andy Powers, the master guitar builder and partner there at Taylor Guitars, playing with a capo that was not a Taylor capo because they didn't exist yet, but it was this style. And so I think that probably informed this. They're made in the US. They are engraved with Taylor and a number 6. And these cradle, clamp-on style capos, like I said, they go back a long, long ways. There's definitely some benefits from any of these, and whether it's this or like a G7th Heritage, which is a rather expensive capo, they're nice to have, but they have some drawbacks. So you can see it's not a quick change. There's no spring-loaded clamping mechanism. You basically have this bar, and you just kind of push to release it. Now on the back, you have another cushion bar. Now the difference on this specifically for Taylor guitars is that it's designed with the curve of their neck, the carve on the back, and the radius in mind. The other thing about it is, I'm going to go and clamp it on now because when I'm not using it, I can loosen the capo, and I can actually bring it up above the nut. Now to hold it in place, I got to tighten it back down again. But it'll stay there. Tighten it up too much, it's going to cause issues with your intonation even when you're not using it. But that's the benefit of this style of capo, and a lot of bluegrass players play these. They just kind of slide them up there, and when they need them, they loosen them and slide them back down. So definitely nice to have. Let's go ahead and try it and see what we get. We're probably going to have to adjust the tension on it like we've seen. So. All right, loosen that, slide it up, put it at the 3rd fret like we've been doing. And you see I'm holding it in place and then tightening it down. There's no clamping. So it's not terribly a long period of time, but it takes longer than maybe like a Kyser would to just throw on there, so to speak. So see if that's enough tension. Nope. So that's enough tension. Let's see what it sounds like. Sounds pretty good. There's not a whole lot of that warble that we typically associate with the poor intonation. So, all in all, it sounds great. Now, if you don't have a Taylor guitar, which means your neck radius, or carve rather, and the fretboard radius are different, then, your mileage may vary. And trying to get this off sometimes can be a bit of a trick. And we're showing you it because that's part of it, right? When it's off the guitar, honestly, it's pretty easy. When it's on the guitar, it's a little tricky. But you're supposed to kind of push down and compress and it slips out. So there we go. Now, Taylor does not advertise this for electrics. But let's see how it sounds on the telly. Okay, so not even going to bother putting it above the nut right here. tighten it in place. See if that's enough. Nope. If we loosen it, will we get better intonation? Dead tones. So, yeah, it's not going to work very well for electric guitar, and I'll tell you why. The design on it is not, in some ways, too dissimilar from that very first Bill Russell capo that we saw, in that this is effectively a cushioned metal bar. Now, in this particular case, Taylor's made it with their radius in mind, but it's not very forgiving compared to some of the other materials that we've looked at. So, it's really good for your Taylor acoustic guitar, and if you like this style of capo, I could recommend it for that. And other guitars it might work very, very well on, particularly as everyone copies Taylor's neck. But outside of that, particularly on electric guitars, I would say it's a no-go. So, pros, it's pretty affordable. It's from Taylor. It's made well. It's made in the US. It's adjustable, which is nice. And you can keep it behind the nut where it's always available on the guitar for your acoustic only. Cons, yeah, don't use it on electric. It's not very easy to change. And it does cost more than any of the other ones that we've looked at so far. Now, let's move on to another one. Lots of you are probably familiar with G7th. They've made capos for a while, and their performance line of capos has been very, very popular, utilizing a cam system to tighten onto the guitar, which I'll show you how it works. Now this, their Performance 3, is the newest in their lineup. I think it came out just this past January at the NAMM show. And it has ART technology, which stands for Adaptive Radius Technology. So this is an intriguing choice for what we're talking about because it's dealing with adjustability, it does have adjustability on it, and adjustments to the radius of the fretboard. Now again, I don't think this is going to work on something like really round like a vintage Fender, but for just about anything else, G7th is saying that it works very, very well to adjust. Now the way that it does that is that they have a pad here, similar to many of the others that we've looked at, that has kind of these moving platforms underneath it that allow the structure supporting the pad beneath to adjust to the radius of the guitar. Now this is one of the more pricey options. So far, everything we've looked at has been around $20, $30. Now we're getting upwards of 50 to 60 bucks right here. So not an inexpensive capo. It's in a variety of finishes. I think they're all metallic. And the way that it works is it's got a cam system. So you basically tighten it on there and then it stays. It doesn't open back up. When you're ready to open it back up, you hit that trigger on the back and it releases the cam. You can go from the top down, from the bass side, or from the treble side. But let's see how well the adjustment of tension and the radius technology works. So. All right, so that's our bass line. Now we're going to capo at the 3rd fret. And I'm going to come from the treble side and then kind of clamp. Now the adjustability is based upon your placement and how hard you push it down. So wherever you stop is where it stops. So that's very light tension. Let's see where it is. It's not enough. Let's try from a bass side down. Let's see if we can get. Oh, okay. So I'm actually watching that little pad kind of move internally as I'm applying pressure. So good little tip, it needs a certain amount of pressure so that those moving kind of platforms can move. All right, so let's see where it's at. not bad. All right, now, of course, let's try it on electric, because this is where we're putting the art technology to the test. We're going from that 15-inch radius just now to a 9.5-inch radius. Let's see how well it conforms. We're out of tune again. Quick speed, super edit. As if electrics weren't finicky enough sometimes with tuning, put a capo on. All right. I'm going to take the same top-down approach. 3rd fret. I just wonder if I backed off the tension a bit. Gets a little better, but still not really good. You're still going to have to retune. So, pros and cons of the G7th. It's a really pretty capo, and I think it could work really well on acoustic guitar, and it could probably work pretty well on electric guitar once you dialed it in. But here's one of the things I'm noticing with this ART technology. If you push on the pad, you can kind of feel it. It feels like most of the adjustment is right there, kind of in the middle of it, you know, and that makes sense. That's where the peak of the radius would be. But you have to apply pressure to get that to adjust. Now, once you've done that, and I noticed it when I just backed off on the electric, then it's kind of sitting in place and you can adjust the tension. But you have to apply that tension first so that it can conform to the radius. And that does make sense. Now, you can adjust the tension on this, but because it's this cam mechanism, there's no fine-tuning adjustment to it. So unlike the Shubb, the Taylor, or the D'Addario, you can't just turn a wheel and adjust the tension while you have it capoed. And granted, the Shubb you can't really too much, but it does better than this. So I think if you purchase one of these, you'll be happy with this low profile, lightweight, and the nice kind of cam system that it has. Once you have it dialed in and you know where it's going to go, it'll probably serve you very, very well. But until that point, you're going to be dealing with some issues like you would with any of the other clamp-on capos. So keep that in mind for the G7th. Now, our final capo is the most expensive, and if you've been on Facebook at all, you've seen their ads. Thalia capos came out a few years ago, and they are now at this point making much more than capos. They have straps and picks and cell phone cases and stuff, and they have branding with a lot of the big manufacturers like Taylor and Martin and Gibson, and they're really beautiful. So the packaging is the nicest so far. It's direct to consumer, so you purchase from Thalia and they ship it to you as so, and you get 2 compartments. So the top one under this polycarbonate cover is the capo itself, and it is a very pretty capo. Now this one is zebra wood in like black chrome, and it's very pretty. I mean, it picks up fingerprints like chrome does, but who cares? And it looks really, really nice. Their branding is fantastic. You can get this with koa wood, East Indian rosewood, various patterns. They do custom models. You can have your name. They have inlays, all sorts of stuff. So really, if you want a really good-looking capo, this one is probably unbeaten. Now, I will say this. This is version 2 of Thalia's capo. When they first came out, I was an early adopter of these, and they've made some changes. The first ones, I think the part that hit the back of your neck was a little shorter, and the spring was heavier. So this action with your finger was not easy because you have to compress this trigger to get it to open up and put it on the guitar. And that actually functions with the slide aspect of it, but they've definitely improved it on this versus the first one. I'll also say, for transparency, there's a seam right here where the metal is kind of put together for the main portion of the capo, and on two of mine, over time, it's separated. But again, that was an early version, so it's very possible that they have adapted that. One of the big reasons I adopted these Thalias early on was because of their focus on the fretboard radius. And I want to show you what it comes with, because I think a lot of the other manufacturers are now talking about it simply because Thalia started talking about it first. So in the case, you get 2 packages of these. These are the pads, the fretboard pads. And there's 2 different materials. There's a harder material and a softer material. The harder material is better if you want to kind of slide from place to place, which this capo will allow you to do. But each one of these is marked with a number, and they have a little manual in there. And the idea is that whatever guitar you're playing, you match up the radius of that guitar with the pad that you need. And they give you some guidance in there for general manufacturer guidelines. Now, I'll say this, if it's a Fender, 9.5 is typical, but there's some signature models out there like an Eric Johnson that's 12. So it's not always, they can't put all that information in there. But right now, I've got on here this pad, and they're real easy to remove, unlike the first ones. They just kind of fit in these grooves. And this is the 16. So this is what you would use for a Taylor guitar or anything else that has a 16-inch radius. It slides in, stays in place, easy. Easy peasy. And you can go top down, bottom up, but you basically just slide on. So let's try the guitar. Set our bass line. All right, now we're going to slide it on. If you've seen any of their videos, particularly early on, if you have the hard pads, you could effectively, while you're playing, grab this and move it. The rubber pads grip on a little bit better, and so not so much. But depending upon your feel and your playing style, you'll probably prefer one over the other, which is why they now include both. So that's in place. Let's check to see where the guitar is at. So there's a little buzz and there's a little deadening of the low E and the A string. If we take a top-down approach, that might fix it but cause problems on the other side. Let's just see. Now keep in mind, this is using that proper pad for this radius. Fix that. So actually, I'm getting better performance kind of top-down with this particular version. Maybe it's the rubber pads I'm using. But all in all, it's a really nice capo. It looks very pretty, but you do pay for it. Let's see what it's like on the electric. Now, since this one has a different pad for the Fender, we're going to switch to it. And just like I showed you, it's real simple. So we're going to just push in. The first ones were hard. They actually sent you a thumbtack with it. So, that's when they were just in the initial designs of this. So it's in place. It's so much easier than the first ones. So we've got the 9 pad on there, which is for the 9.5-inch radius of a Fender. And we'll check the guitar first. We'll try from the bottom up. Let's try from the top down. We had better performance on the Taylor with that. Let's just see. If So move it back. So we're still out of tune, and I'm not terribly surprised even though we have the right radius pad, and here's why. Pros and cons of this capo. It's beautiful, particularly some of the versions that you can get with custom stuff or their abalone, what have you. The Thalia capo is absolutely a gorgeous capo, but it has the same failing that the Kyser capo has that costs a fraction of it, and that is this single spring trigger mechanism to it. There's no adjustability. Now, one of the big pros of this is the pads that you get with it. The fact that you can change out to different radiuses is definitely a bonus on this, so you can set this up and adapt it to your particular guitar or guitars. Now, there's a downside to that. If you want to switch guitars, you have to switch pads. Now, they do give you this nice little carrying bag for the capo and the fretboard pads, but you will have to switch them out. If you have this set up for a acoustic guitar and switch to electric or vice versa, you're going to have issues. And even after you switch it, like we just saw, you might still have to retune and everything because of the tension. And that's something that I think is very important to warrant. If I'm a fan of any of these, it's the ones that give us the most adjustability for tension and give us the happy medium when it comes to the fretboard radius. None of these are going to deal with every single fretboard on the market that's out there, right out of the gate with the perfect radius. I think maybe the Shubb comes the closest, and the G7th as far as compromising on trying to get all those various radiuses with one capo. But being able to adjust the tension is very, very important, because it's not just the radius, it's also the tension of the strings based upon the diameter of the strings and the setup on your guitar and so forth. So keep that in mind. I still like these quite a bit. I might eventually get one, but I'll set it up for just one of my acoustic guitars and that'll be it. Now, if the people from Thalia have some ideas of what I did wrong, please comment below and we'll be glad to try it again. We don't sell those, by the way. I ordered that from Thalia. They didn't send it to us to say, hey, do a review. They didn't know who I was when I ordered the capo. Maybe they do now. So maybe they don't. So there you have it, 8 different capos. There's a lot more on the market, but this is a pretty good cross-section of the ones that are most popular and the types that are out there. So hopefully this was helpful to you in your capo shopping and guitar accessorizing. So if you have any questions, make sure to comment below. If you have any comments on your own experience, we'd like to hear from you and share your knowledge with the rest of us. If you're new to the channel, this is what we do. We do these videos for you, so make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos, and keep coming back for more. At the end of the day, the best guitar in the world with a capo on it is the one that's in tune. So that's important. So keep playing, and we'll keep making these videos for you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.